I'll just hope. Hi, I'm at my mom's house again, hence the very mom background. I'm so happy. Where's it right here? These baby pictures of me are out of focus because that would be really embarrassing, but also I don't want to move my mom's stuff. So here we are. Anyway, the point of why I'm here speaking to you today, I'm on Goodreads a lot, but for some reason, because it's kind of like a boring, not well done website, but I love just looking at it. I don't know, it doesn't really make any sense. But if you have a Goodreads, or if you've ever used Goodreads, you know that every single time you look at a book on the website, up in the top right corner, there's a little section called Readers Also Enjoy. Just basically, Goodreads gives you recommendations for other books you might like based off of a certain book. I didn't need to make it sound that complicated. It's really simple. So for as long as I've been using Goodreads, I've never actually checked out these recommendations, and I thought that now might be a fun time to try. So I went through Goodreads, I looked at 3 of my favorite books, and this week, probably longer than a week for me, I'm going to be reading Goodreads recommendations based off of my favorite books. I meant to film this intro a long time ago. I've actually picked up one of these books. I'm already basically almost finished with it. But that's nice because I'll wait to finish it today and update you guys immediately. But for now, I'm just going to go through my favorite books and the books that Goodreads recommended me. And then I'll take you throughout the week as I read them, let you know my thoughts. And at the end, we'll come back and I'll discuss if I thought Goodreads was accurate or not. Okay, so the first favorite book that I looked at is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This is a book that is very dear to me. I read it years ago. I'm afraid to read it again because I'm not sure if I'll still like it the same amount. And it sounds a little bit cheesy in its premise, so just bear with me. It follows a main character, Sorcha. I'm definitely saying that wrong. She has all these older brothers, her father gets married to her stepmother, and there's like a curse put on her brothers where they're all turned into swans, and she can only save them by, like, the conditions are she can't speak, and she has to sew them like shirts out of this barbed plant. It sounds really weird. It is weird, but it's also very beautiful. To me, it's very cozy. Like, I loved it. I loved that book. I still do. Still considered my favorites. And for that book, Goodreads recommended Dear Skin by Robin McKinley. So I bought this book just because I've seen Goodreads recommend it for Daughter of the Forest so many times, so the past 5 years. So I recognized it on site. I didn't know what it was about when I bought it. This book follows a main character named Lizar, I don't know how to say her name. You're sensing a theme here. I can't pronounce shit. She's a princess in this kingdom. She's the only heir to the throne. Her mother's the most beautiful woman in the entire world, and she gets deathly ill. She makes her husband promise that he won't marry anyone that isn't as beautiful as her. Okay. She dies. And then, for some reason, this is gross, Lizar's father starts getting interested in her. I think you can see where that goes. I'm having a lot of issues with this book. I will talk about it when I am finished, which will be 30 pages. But after that, I looked at recommendations based off of Game of Thrones, because I love Game of Thrones. And for that, there's a classic mentioned that honestly I've been meaning to pick up for forever. The Fellowship of the Ring. I have this little baby, like, Bible-sized edition. I've read The Hobbit numerous times. I've never read The Fellowship. So I'm actually very excited to read this. And I do know that George R. R. Martin has mentioned, obviously, the Lord of the Rings series as being a big inspiration for Game of Thrones. And then last but not least, I looked at recommendations based off of, I forget the fucking name. How could I forget the name? It's one of my favorite books. And then last but not least, I looked for recommendations for books similar to Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. I loved that book. It is a short story collection that kind of deals with the horror of being a woman in modern day society. It's beautiful, it's fantastic, it's so creative, it's so unique, I'm obsessed with it. And for that book, Goodreads recommended Bluets by Maggie Nelson. I've heard of this before. I only have a bare understanding that it's a bunch of poems revolving around the color blue that are meant to portray grief, I think. I ordered this copy forever ago, and it's really gross and dirty. So I'm not really looking forward to it for that reason, but I will move past it. So those are the 3 books I'll be reading this week. I'm gonna go get reading and I'll be back when I finish Deerskin. The background behind me looks so wonky. I promise you, it's just because the camera's at an angle. I also do want to reiterate that I'm at my mom's house because this and this little bear thing in the corner, that's not me, okay? I love my mom. Okay, so I finished Deerskin. Let's talk about it. Not a fan. I started having issues with this book as soon as I picked it up. But I try to make myself finish books. I probably should have given up on this one, to be honest. I have so many issues with it. I think, like, my biggest issue with the book is that not a single character has a personality. The only character trait of any of these characters, and especially the main character, is that they like dogs. That's it. That's all the character building there is. It's like, oh my god, this girl loves dogs. There's nothing, like, and she goes through like all this traumatic stuff, but it's like, there's nothing else there to say who she is. Like, she doesn't have a personality. Oh god. And then, like, for most of the book, at all times, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, at all times, at least half the characters are just dogs. I like dogs, but I don't want to read a book where half of each scene is just like the writer describing the dog as like if it can talk, being like, oh, like the dog did this, which like meant that. I hate it. I hated it. And then another part, like the writing also wasn't good. All tell, no show. It was really plain. It was like kind of cringy. There's a character in this book, just like a side character. His name was Longsword. Why would you name someone that? And how do you have that name and like it's not a sexual thing? Because it has to be sexual. And then another issue I have with this book that started right in the beginning, which kind of set me off on the wrong foot. It just seems like a very naive portrayal of politics, but like kingdoms especially. Like in the whole like first couple chapters, the main character, you know, she's a princess, but she's the only heir to the throne. But no one cares about her, and she spends her entire childhood, like, basically alone, just, like, with one hired caretaker. And, like, the king and queen are so beloved by the entire kingdom, and the entire kingdom thinks the king and queen are perfect and amazing. And I have issues with both of those things. Because first of all, realistically, there's never gonna be a king that's just completely unanimously loved by everyone and everyone in the entire country believes they can do nothing wrong. Like, that's just, okay, that's not how things work. And then the idea that this girl was the sole heir to these absolutely beloved, like, monarchs, and no one cared about her, and she was never in public, and she was just kind of like in a room. No. It felt unbelievable. And there are scenes too when the king is like starting to be a fucking disgusting creep, where she tries to describe it from the point of view of like the ministers around, and they're all still just like in complete unanimous support of the king and still think he's amazing, and they're just questioning like his daughter and stuff, and that's just not how people work. It's just, I don't know, I had so many issues with it. It did get more interesting for maybe like the last third or last quarter. I think it was really cheesy. I think it was like a very naive portrayal of the story, because the story is like traumatic. There's rape, there's incest, there's miscarriage, there's a ton of crazy, awful, traumatic, scarring things happening, but then it still feels like the portrayal of the world is so naive. And I'm not even saying that like a fantasy has to feel realistic, but something as small as like making it so that the king is just universally beloved is just stupid enough that it takes me out of the story. I did not like this. I also spent like a month of my life reading this because it took me so long to get through it. So I'm really glad I'm done with this. Moving on, I'm gonna pick up Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This is only like 100 pages or so and it's all poems, so I'm hoping I can get through it like today. I'm also not a poetry person, so we'll see how this goes. I am so tired. Hi, it's night. I just finished Maggie Nelson's Bluets. I think that's how you say it. I could definitely be wrong. I don't know how I feel about it. I read it all today, So it didn't take me long at all. It's only about 90 pages. I'm not even sure if it's technically poetry. I think it is. At the same time, it's kind of more like a collection of thoughts or essays in the form of like 3 sentences. I've never read anything like this, so I guess that's a mark in her favor. Basically, she is exploring love and heartache through the color blue and her love for the color blue. I thought the writing was really great, but also at the same time, like I said before, it just kind of feels like a jumbled mass of random thoughts and random observations. She draws a lot from other literature and other people that I do not know, and I feel like a lot of times when she mentioned those other people, like when she was quoting things, she didn't really make it cohesive enough, so I had a hard time following a lot of what she said. I don't know if that's because I'm dumb, or if it's because I'm tired, or if it's just a little bit confusing of a book. Could be a mix of all 3. There were a lot of lines and a lot of moments in this book that I thought were really beautiful, but overall, like, I'm sitting here feeling like it didn't really have any impact on me at all. I don't know if that's just the length. I don't know. 2 stars, maybe 3. I feel like I have to sit on it a little bit, and then maybe in the morning I will see clearly. So, I'm not starting it now because I am tired. Next book I have is Fellowship of the Ring. I am going to New York tomorrow, so I'm not sure that I'm going to have much time to read. Maybe on the train. I don't know. I will keep you updated. I have finished reading Fellowship of the Ring. Got it right here to prove it. So let's talk a wrap up before I get into my feelings on this book specifically that I'm now holding backwards. First book first. Dear Skin by Robin McKinley. Already shared with you my thoughts. As far as the comparison to Daughter of the Forest, aka one of my favorite books ever, I don't fucking get it. Like, I feel like I can see small through lines that people could have connected. These books are both fairy tale retellings, and they're both kind of like niche fairy tales, not stuff that Disney has turned into movies, and not fairy tales that people generally think of, or fairy tale retelling that you generally see. They have that in common. Unique fairy tale retellings. I think they also both share like kind of the naivete, I don't know how to say the word, that I was criticizing with this book. I feel like if I was to go back into Daughter of the Forest, I would see a lot of that, but I feel like in this book it's more of an issue, because in this book it's just the entire thing. It's just not good, and Daughter of the Forest is. Daughter of the Forest, beautiful lyrical writing. This, really, really bad writing. Daughter of the Forest, fully fleshed out characters. The main character doesn't even fucking speak for most of the book, and she still has a fully formed personality. You grow to love her. There's also the side characters that you grow to love, and even then, like, for most of the book, when she is alone, it's not something that's annoying because it fits and it's well done. This book, the characters are very one-dimensional. I don't like them. And then, again, similar, I guess, for a lot of this book, the main character is out there on her own, but in this book, it just drags and drags and drags, and the main character feels stupid. God, you hate spending the time with her that's necessary for you to read this entire fucking book, because it's decently long too. So do I think this is a good recommendation for people who like Daughter of the Forest? Absolutely not. In no way. I wouldn't recommend this book. I'm sorry if you love it, but I think you're wrong. I don't think it really holds up, like, in the comparison, other than the fact that they're unique fairy tale retellings. There's a common element of sexual assault, and the main character spends a lot of time alone, but those commonalities aren't big enough to say that I think the books are similar. Moving on. I don't know why I keep doing this today. I look like a magician a little bit. Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This book was suggested because I really love Riding at Other Parties by Carmen Machado. This book, it's been a while since I've read it. I got sick in the middle of this, so it was postponed for like an entire fucking month. So it's been forever since I read this. And it's just really unmemorable. I read it basically all in one sitting, which granted could be my bad because I feel like something like this, like poetry, shouldn't be read all in one sitting. I don't think that's the best way to digest it, but at the same time I feel like it was good. It still would have stuck with me in some way. I vaguely remember enjoying the writing, so maybe that could be something that ties them both together, or at least like why Goodreads recommended this book for that one. Like kind of edgy writing, kind of, I don't even know. Would I recommend recommend this to people who love Her Body Other Parties? No. I don't really see much of a through line other than perhaps the writing. Maybe if you like that writing style, you would appreciate this, but I think that Her Body Other Parties maybe has more substance, which is controversial. But this book, it was just like hard to grasp. It was like the themes were really fleeting. It was hard to fully understand what the author was trying to say. Could be me, because I'm a little dumb, especially when it comes to poetry. It's not something I normally read. But this one, I also don't think the connection makes much sense unless you're just in it for the writing. And then finally, let's talk Fellowship. Out of all the books I read for this one was definitely my favorite. Not that there's steep competition here, because the other ones were kind of flops. So quickly, my thoughts. I definitely enjoyed it. It did take me a bit to get through though, and I think you kind of have to go into it understanding like this is an old book. This is like kind of a trailblazer in fantasy, so it's not going to be as engaging as the modern fantasy epics that are coming out today. All in all though, I did really like it, and as far as the connection to Game of Thrones, like this one's blatantly obvious. George R.R. Martin has said like multiple times that he was inspired by Lord of the Rings. That's one of his biggest inspirations in general for his work. And specifically that Game of Thrones was inspired by Lord of the Rings, so of course it makes sense. At the end of the day, I still prefer Game of Thrones, which is also very controversial. My thing with this is I think that if I had gotten really into this when I was younger, I would still have some like that nostalgic factor. I loved the movies growing up, but obviously books are a whole different beast. I think like as I said, the main thing about this as compared to Game of Thrones is that it's just not as engaging, or at least I personally don't think so. Both of them have really complex, amazing world building, but I think that in Fellowship it's just, again, this is a really early fantasy book, so I feel like the world building isn't developed as well in here. Like in Game of Thrones, I keep hello. In Game of Thrones, you don't notice the world building actively, like most of the time. Sometimes you might notice a couple of stray sentences, but in this one, it's like the world building is just every 10 pages, there's like a super long story or long poem that's supposed to be telling you like a story in the world, but then it's kind of boring and I personally don't really pay attention to them. I feel like I skim over it. Or just like every fucking page there's just some reference to some obscure thing that's never actually explained. I can understand how that would be cool for someone who's like super into Tolkien, and for someone who has like read all the mythology of Middle Earth, but for someone who just casually wanted to read Fellowship, it took me out of the story time and time again, because there was just all these obscure references that I didn't understand and weren't explained, and it feels like they were just kind of plopped in there for the purposes of like world building, like showing how large and complex the world is, but to me it just didn't feel effective, and it really like jolted me out of the reading experience time and time again. Also, like I think Game of Thrones has the advantage of being a bit more dark and a bit more complex. I feel like I'm gonna get yelled after this. I mean, obviously this isn't as dark a story as Game of Thrones, where all the main characters are dying every single book. Personally, I really like those twisted elements. I don't know why I'm saying twisted. I meant to say like those twists. I like those darker elements. I like that George R.R. Martin isn't afraid to be ruthless with his characters and to make things really morally gray. This book also has a lot less of that. I feel like this one is a bit more black and white, although later on in the series I do feel like that changes, but just Fellowship alone, I mean, like every character that you encounter in this book is trying to help Frodo. There's one bad guy who's briefly mentioned in someone else's story, but every single person or being that Frodo meets on his quest is genuinely good and like helps him along. And that's just not realistic. I mean, neither is an orc or an elf for that matter, but still, it's like, I think small things like that just bother me because it feels like it's a little bit too easy on the characters, and I like the complexity and I like the drama. But all in all, I do think this one makes so much fucking sense to be recommended for Game of Thrones. It's the only book here that makes sense. So maybe at the end of the day, Goodreads' recommendation system isn't that great, which is a bit of a letdown, but to be honest, I never really found recommendations that way anyway. But maybe I'll do this again in the future and have better results. It's a very low standard. It's only up from here. But that's all for today. Oh my god, I was like gonna salute you or something, but with both hands. What am I doing? I don't know. Goodbye. Thank you.